The following is a presentation of Moonlight Media Works.
Let's do it.
Let's do it! It's another edition of the Oh, that was a bad one. That was a bad one. Let's try that again. It's a brand new edition of the Collins Janus Show, a Moonlight Media Works production. It is actually Friday when we're recording this. You can tell because it's sunny outside and you can see that coming in from the window. Natural light, they call that. I don't know why I have an artificial light up still, but I do. And we're recording this on Friday of Masters Week, Bristol Week. A lot of things coming up this weekend. Was a little under the weather last night. Didn't get it done for you guys last night, so we'll run through this one, get it out to you today. Same day episode. What more can you ask for? I do this for you. Remember that. I do this for you. Do this for me. Mostly me, but also for you. No, I'm just kidding. No, we appreciate everybody that tunes in each and every week. We do have a lot to cover, though, so we'll get right into it. National Championship. Michigan wins the title this year over UConn. Really good game. Officiating was going to be what it was. I think even Dan Hurley kind of said it was in his post-game press conference. I know a lot of UConn fans were miffed, and even casual basketball fans watching the game were miffed. And as somebody rooting for UConn in that game, I'm not going to make it about the officiating. Michigan was the best team all year long. I think UConn definitely had a chance to win that game. They played a great game in spite of the fact they were overcoming a couple of those obstacles. They were down on size. I mean, Michigan was a bigger team start to finish. They had depth, and UConn really kept in there, played a physical game, fought with them all game long, tried their best. Ultimately didn't come home with a title, but regardless, it's still a phenomenal year, all things considered, what Dan Hurley and that squad put together. You leave a legacy behind it, a guy like Alex Caravan, one of the greatest Huskies to ever play. I mean, that's undisputable at this point. But there's a lot of significant things about this college basketball season and this Final Four / championship win for Michigan. First off, I want to kind of run through some of my bigger picture topics when it came to the NCAA tournament. Illinois really impressed me, and I know that sounds crazy for a team that was a 3 seed. Look, the Big Ten I thought was inevitably going to eat itself in this tournament. I mean, Wisconsin completely choked on the opening week. Michigan obviously wins the title, but you have Illinois that was really strong, and you've got other examples of the Big Ten showing up. I think Purdue did better than I thought Purdue had any right to. I thought Purdue were fraudulent, but they weren't as fraudulent as I thought they were. But the Big Ten has kind of asserted itself near the top of the heap, and Illinois in particular, I think has really hit on something that you're going to see going forward, which is the incorporation of European players at a higher level. I mean, the sport itself, as far as professional, non-professional, G League players playing, signing with teams now for college to go back, it's very stupid. It's all very stupid. But even in stupidity, there is genius to be found, and I think it's in the case of Illinois and what Brad Underwood and his squad were able to put together. I think they've really utilized the overseas pool of players really well, and I think it's kept them a traditionally strong program. I don't know if they were going to be an up and down sort of program where you go up for a couple years, you make the tournament, deep runs, do all that, or you sink back down after you don't have the players. Like, they've been able to kind of stay in a lockstep each couple years after. So I think they're a player to watch for years to come, and it's all due in part to what that coaching staff and company have done there. And as I've talked about on this show more than one time, mark it down, coaching matters as much, if not more, in this sport than any other college sport. Coaching matters. And it's something as a child I didn't understand. I didn't understand just the level of impact a college basketball coach was when you're watching college basketball when you're a kid. It's like, well, whoever has the ball, just pass to the open guy and try and get a shot. There's just so much more going into it, especially now that they basically serve as recruiter, agent, GM. They have a lot of hats as a head coach of a basketball team. And Dan Hurley, who I've already mentioned in this episode, made an interesting comment. I believe it was on the Dan Patrick show earlier this week, is the dog. Charlie, thank you, sweetie. Smelly dog. She needs a bath, and she's over there scratching and jingling like this with her collar. So it's very distracting. It's very distracting. I love this dog. I really do. She's out of frame, but she's right there. She's right there almost the whole show. Dan Hurley made a comment on the Dan Patrick show, basically to the effect of, we're at a crossroads ourselves as a program. Do we want to keep it the way we've done, hold the line and build players predominantly from the high school pool and build up from there? Or do we want to wipe the board clean and get new guys in here every year instead of just shopping for one or two? Just wipe the board clean and go to the next year and restart over completely. And on paper, you understand what he's trying to say there, but I think the greatest example of why you can't wipe the board clean every year and do what Michigan did. Michigan had all transfers in its starting five. First team to ever do that in the modern NIL landscape of college basketball. One thing I think that has proven to be successful with what UConn's methodology is of maybe just shopping for a part or two, and I think that's more commonly accepted amongst colleges, and why it should be commonly accepted, is the idea that if you're going to wipe the board clean and you're going to go poach the 4 or 5 best guys out of the portal and try to run that roster out there and win, you're going to get into situations in high leverage moments in games where you just don't have the cohesion. Now, you can work all summer long and do everything you want, but to put a group of guys together versus a group of guys that have been together for a couple years, know the situation, have been preached in practice. They understand what their coaching staff expects of them in that moment. And it's maybe a fair or unfair criticism, but one thing you can knock these Duke teams, these uberly talented Duke teams, is in the last 2 years, in high leverage situations, in the biggest games possible, they have had horrific results in a couple of situations. And you want to put that up against a team like a UConn, like, some of these other programs that we talk about, that they keep their guys around together and they kind of maintain that team and consistent image the whole way through, is they handle those situations really well. And it paid off for UConn with that buzzer beater win over Duke. Now, granted, there are a lot of things. There's a lot of fluky things that happen in situations, but you don't come back from that deficit without having a really good vision and a really strong idea for your team and coaching staff of what has to happen in said order to get this accomplished. So I think wiping the board clean sounds attractive, but in the end, I think you're going to need guys that know the team vision, know how to handle key situations, aren't just getting in 1 year, out the door the next year. And I'm sure there are plenty of guys that want to do that. And I think free agency every year is just a catastrophic mess when it comes to college sports, but that's beside the point. So hats off to Michigan. I haven't spent hardly any time talking about it, but what Dusty May and company have done at Michigan has been impressive. Where Dusty May started at Florida Atlantic a couple years ago, taking them taking them deep in the tournament as they did. I mean, that should have raised all the alarms that, hey, this guy's on your roster if you need a coach. And Michigan said, that's ours. We got him. I just bopped my head into that thing. But Michigan was the best team year round. I said that. I said it on this show when we did the bracket. By the way, never been more unhappy to actually win a bracket challenge or predict a good bracket. I mean, I only got 2 out of the 4, but that's not a great bracket in my opinion. But got the champion right. And I knew, and as much as people loved Arizona, I knew Michigan would do exactly what they did to them. Michigan kind of lays in the weeds. They kind of lie in wait, and then they just strike like that. I mean, they're a good team in that regard. And again, UConn brought the fight to them, and they had to go physical, and they had to get aggressive, and the refs weren't giving them much leeway. But that was the way you're going to beat a bigger team like that. I mean, and the shooting from outside started to pick up in the second half, and it helped in periodical spurts, but they just couldn't close the gap. So there you go. Congrats to the national champion Michigan Wolverines. I mean, starting fresh. You're going to do that again next year? You're going to go from five new guys in there? I don't know. I mean, that was a great squad, and I mean, the funniest part of the whole, or not funniest part, but the wildest part to kind of explain this whole period is Taurus Reed started his career at Michigan, wound up playing for UConn, plays in that title game, has a good game, and, he started on one side of this matchup to the other. These teams have won 3 titles in 4 years, and just because of the luck of the draw, he wasn't on, it wasn't a starter on those teams that won. So it's unfortunate, but he played a phenomenal tournament, and I my hat goes off to him and a lot of players, but he had a phenomenal tournament. And I think I said it at the beginning at one point to a couple of colleagues. I said, this team will go as far as Taurus Reed drags them. And that's not entirely true because it's a whole team game. But if Taurus Reed didn't play at a high level, UConn would struggle. And he played at a high level, and he got him deeper in the tournament because of it. Moving on, number 2. It is Masters Week, as I mentioned. It is that time of the year where people pretend to be golf fans that aren't golf fans. And if you work in golf, like I do, it's basically the most important week of the year outside of any event locally that we might have to work, like, the Truist or some shit like that. And day one, delivered some interesting storylines. I mean, we were talking about old man Freddie Couples getting out there and playing great on the front nine and then ultimately losing his day. We had Bryson DeChambeau using a club he 3D printed himself, and he went out there and laid the sod over on it. I mean, it was bad. But, day one leaderboard looked like Rory McIlroy and Sam Burns at the top of the field at 5 under. Some interesting names in the top 10. You had Wyndham Clark work his way up there 2 under. He got an early start today. He's sitting still at 2 under through 12. Xander Schauffele, my guy, big Xander guy, finished the day at 2 under. Scotty Scheffler was 2 under for day one. You can go further down the list. Brooks Koepka finished the day at 17th, I believe, at eve. I think he was even, or might have been 1 over. I can't remember because they've started the round now. But you've got some interesting names that are in the equation here. I had originally picked on the programs that I do to go with Cameron Young. And Cameron Young was 1 over for the day yesterday. He's currently T30. I think, momentum is a big thing when it comes to this golf course. It will also humble you faster if you have momentum than any other golf course in the world. Some other names that also worked themselves out of the equation already are Robert McIntyre. He was a very popular pick, but he sits through 2 right now, 10 under. Or 10 over, excuse me. If he was 10 over, he was 10 under, he'd be in a lot better shape than he is. He is 10 over through 2 holes today. I mean, he for the total tournament there, so he's off to a horrible start after being a popular pick. Some of the live guys are struggling as well. We mentioned DeChambeau, who finished at 4 over yesterday. You've got Cam Smith, who's 2 over. You've got, let's see, next big live name we didn't mention. We've got, John Rahm, 4 over. I mean, John Rahm's a former Masters champ. You got some guys that are in here. And again, you don't want to do the classic overreaction Thursday thing because today to me is really more important than yesterday. And I know you could say that every day. Well, then tomorrow's more important than that one. Yeah, I know. But to me, I want to see a guy set himself up for Saturday, Sunday, as opposed to, if you lay the sod over on Thursday, you can eliminate yourself rather quickly. You can write yourself out of the equation just as quickly as you can put yourself in it at Augusta. If you want my honest opinion, I had said Cam Young would be my pick to win this tournament. I have to tell you, though, this is going to be interesting because it's really hard to give a prediction based off of these early results. I think Rory will figure into the equation on Sunday. He might be a classic example of once a guy breaks through for one, you could turn the faucet on and he can just win another, or he could win a bunch of things immediately after. But he's definitely got the right attack so far this weekend, and we'll see what happens when he shows up later on in the afternoon. I'm still gonna ride with Cam Young. I still think he's got a shot. I do really like Xander, who probably, who's been in the mix but hasn't really threatened to win the actual tournament. In the grand scheme, I'm sure you can pull rounds and different things like that. But I would say Xander's definitely one to watch because Xander has that big game moment ability in him. And then, of course, Scotty Scheffler's right there. Scotty will be a part of this. Rory will be a part of this. You've got some of those guys that will be a part of this. I'd like to see Koepka get involved. Koepka's had a miserable start to his return to the PGA Tour. But this is a great event. I do think it is funny. We talk about all the hoity-toityness and the prim and proper aspects of the Masters, but it really is a unique event, and they do try to protect their legacy better than most sporting events do. So I give my, hat goes off, as my hair is a mess, to the Masters for what they do. I've never been. I have hats and shirt from my cousin that was nice enough to get him for me, but I cover it. It's the biggest event of the year. There's a reason for it. I don't, talking with some people, the show we produce on the Be the Right Club Today podcast with Hal Sutton. Hal's one of the, great golf legends, one of the few that I actually have had the pleasure of speaking to and getting to know over the last couple of years. And, he's well documented in his history at the Masters, and it's proof positive that there are examples of guys that never won the Masters. This course really is an outlier, even as some of the greats. I mean, Lee Trevino, you can go up and down the list of guys. I mean, you could talk about Greg Norman's catastrophes at Augusta. I mean, there are all sorts of legends of the game, some more so than others, and, guys I respect, guys I, whatever. But that struggle with this course, and it's just, it will play that thin line of fair, unfair, probably any more aggressively than any course you're going to find. I mean, you might think you have a shot to the pin, and you wind up off the hole altogether. I mean, it's just there's a level of difficulty that this course, aspires to have every year, and it's the same track. It's just a matter of how they set it up, just ever so slightly, tweaking it, just making it just to the point where you want to go, oh, but I'm at Augusta, I can't have a tantrum. It will test you, and that's what makes it so popular to so many people. I mean, there are a lot of people my age, they're just there for it's almost like the Kentucky Derby. They want to show off the look, they want to get the sandwiches. I mean, first of all, hats off to the pricing on food at Augusta, food and drink at Augusta. Good for them. They were self-aware enough to go, look, this is not an easy ticket. Maybe we don't bilk people out of every dollar while they're here. Between the merch store and the food and beverage merchandise and all that other stuff, they do a good job there. They do a phenomenal job there. And again, it's an event that I think most sporting fans would tell you they'd like to attend once. I've never been. I'd like to go once. And, it probably wouldn't even fully comprehend in my brain until I could actually go and walk the property and see it and stuff. But it's also, it's also that unattainable level. It's like, it's still Augusta. It's like, look, this is beyond your grasp, because you have to apply for tickets and all that. And, it can be difficult, but it's an event that will keep my attention all weekend long, whether I had to be working with it or not. So there you go. That's story number 2 on the day. I write this stuff out. I mean, you can see that it's pretty messy. And there's no real rhyme or reason to the way I order this stuff. It's just how I feel about talking about it. Number 3 on my sheet, according to the script, the Michael Jackson biopic. I don't know if you guys have seen this, but a Michael Jackson biopic that's coming out in the next month or so. There was a story that ran yesterday, I think it was yesterday or the day before when I wrote this down, that they've had to rework that movie a little bit. I believe they had scrubbed some of the sordid details of Michael Jackson's, legal trials with regards to underage interactions with minors and such, and some of the cases that have been brought against Michael in years past. What they did choose to focus on was some of the antics and some of the behaviors of Michael's father, who we now know had an adversarial at times relationship, abusive at times relationship is probably the best way to describe it. Both physically, verbally, all those are well documented. I appreciate them not steering away from that. Now, the trick with a lot of these biopics, and it's what brought me to this conversation, is the estates of deceased stars or the existing band members of a band dictating how a biopic about them should go. Now, I understand completely that the Jackson estate, who probably does the estate of a deceased star better than anybody, wants to protect the image of Michael Jackson, albeit one that, while he was alive, was sordid and had numerous rumors and numerous, trials and different things brought up against him while he was alive. I think that's my ultimate problem is like I would wish that as long as if you're going to do a career, a whole look at it, and I don't know the exact timeline of when this movie is supposed to run from, but I would imagine if you're trying to give a complete picture, even if you believe, that he wasn't convicted of anything in court, if you're of the Jackson family and the Jackson estate, you're going to go, well, we're not going to give those people any satisfaction by bringing it up in this film. I don't know that that's fair to a generation of people that lived through that would be like, well, I want to watch this movie, but if you're going to take that part out of the story, what else are you going to take out of the story? What else are you fabricating? What else are you, I mean, I wasn't alive. So for me to speak on some of those is kind of silly. I've gone back and read some of the things that came out, and, it's interesting because, there are stories and movies made about this, and the Jackson families had to go and, discredit some people and other things. I'm fascinated by the story, and I want the whole story. When it comes to famous people, whether they did good things, bad things, not good things, not bad things, I mean, whether they're the biggest star in the world, which Michael Jackson was the biggest star in the world for a long time. I mean, that's stardom that's only been seen by like the Beatles and maybe a couple other people now who I won't mention because you know who they are. That's a level of superstardom that very few people, Elvis, that very few people get to. And I think it's interesting when we have a film being made about that. And as somebody who is fascinated by that and fascinated by the inner workings of all that, I want to see it all because Michael Jackson's life is a hell of a roller coaster. It goes like this the entire way through. And I think it's worth doing well. And that's my biggest concern when I talk about biopics, because I think I saw some of the commentary on Twitter and some of the other platforms on social media going, well, great, are we getting another sing-along biopic like We Will Rock, not We Will Rock You, Bohemian Rhapsody, or are we getting another whitewashed kind of, messy biopic? Like the Elton John one was a big disappointment because they tried to clean up some of the more sordid, more rock starish details of both Elton John's life, and then in Bohemian Rhapsody, they completely neuter the idea of Freddie Mercury's life story and Queen, and that's the problem. Elton John obviously still alive. I think he was a little bit more open to the idea of being a little bit more tell it like it is. Queen, on the other hand, probably a bit more protective of their deceased frontman and their image as a band. I think, they kind of play with the timeline in that movie a good bit. They make Freddie out to have been quitting, and it was some big deal, even though they'd all already left at previous points and done solo projects. So the idea that Freddie broke up Queen is stupid because they never really broke up Queen. They just took breaks. It's just like it. There's very narrative, helpful things in that story that just aren't true. And my issue with this is there are a lot of interesting stories between celebrities and, musicians that deserve a full-length biopic. Like I know Kiss, one of my favorite band of all time, getting a biopic treatment at some point. They've been working on one. Seems like that timeline is moving through. But Gene and Paul are going to be the one. Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley are going to be the ones dictating how that story's told. Well, let's call it like we see it. Their attitude about previous members and the history of the band is not always going to be as close to the actual story that we all got to see as they would like you to believe. So, I mean, they're going to tweak it and they're going to do that. And I would just hope that, now that in their career, they can accept a couple of things were true, even if they didn't, spin that narrative in the public for a long time, because they didn't do that. And, you could go back to other instances like the Motley Crue one was good. I think it probably played up a little too much on the substance, so to speak, the glitz and the glam and the decadence, which is admittedly Motley Crue's image. But at the same time, I think it left a little thin on some of the other parts of the story. Whereas, there's no way to get it perfect, but all I want to see from biopics is trying to get as close to a real telling of these stories, because the reality is often more interesting than the fictionalized versions of it. or the fabricated versions of it, I should say. I went back and watched, for context sake, and, you know, I had wanted to see it, but I didn't see it while I was in the theater. The Springsteen Deliver Me from Nowhere biopic done by Scott Cooper, who's a director I do like, and Jeremy Allen White. You know, and the interesting part of that is the criticism of a movie like that, at least the ones I read, taking Bruce's politics and everything else that everybody already knows about Bruce, take all that aside, throw it out. Just talk about it as a narrative film, because that's how I want to discuss it. I'm not going to do anything other. They say nothing happens in the movie, and it's boring, and it's slow, and it's like, to me, that's at least interesting to me, because it's talking about a period of time where a guy's on a commercial high. He starts to get with The River. You had Hungry Heart, and a bunch of other big hits off that album. Starts the upward trajectory of Bruce's career, and in the middle of it, he's battling some depression with his, you know, his relationship with his father and his upbringing and such, and he wants to put out this kind of folk album where he sits with the acoustic in his house and just records it low def and does almost like a proto indie rock record, do-it-yourself DIY project, and gives us Nebraska, which is one of my favorite Bruce Springsteen albums. If you just want to listen to something with, you know, some really deep messaging and interesting storylines to it, I think Nebraska is a really good album. And it's an interesting period in its time, because you have the germ of what's going to later become Born in the USA, which is like the biggest album of his entire career. And you have record company people being like, we need to put this is what needs to happen. Let's strike while the iron's hot. And you have Bruce's camp, which is like, this is what we have to do first. This is how we have to see it. I'm not doing that until I can finish this. And again, like all biopics, especially from someone like Bruce Springsteen, there's a little bit of self-importance there. Like, come on now, it's not the most important thing in the world what we're talking about. But if you enjoy the history of music and the history of artists and different time periods of music in the record industry, that's an interesting movie. I enjoyed it. I found it quite interesting. And admittedly, I had to go back, and once I watched it, I had to go back and figure out, okay, what's true, what isn't. And that's just me. I will do that for anything I watch. And sometimes it ruins the image of what you just watched, but it's also true to the story, and that's what I want to get to more often than not. Now, sometimes the truth isn't interesting, and it doesn't deserve a biopic about it. But when the truth is interesting and you fail to deliver that in a biopic, that's when I get mad, because it ruins it for all future biopics down the road. So that's just something that I deciphered from this weekend. I hope the Michael Jackson one doesn't take too many pieces of Michael's life out of it. And I hope the Jackson family estate doesn't completely ruin what is a very interesting movie, because he really only get one chance at it. Now, the Beatles have had several different movies. They're coming out with a series of 4 biopics over the coming years. It'll be interesting to see. That's a grand project that I'm very intrigued by. But they've had a number of biopics made about them and such. But a lot of times an artist only gets one chance to tell that story right, and a big Hollywood studio only gets one chance to do it right. So I would say, please don't botch the opportunity when you have interesting source material. We talked about it a week or two ago. The final verdict has come down from Chapel Hill, North Carolina. The UNC Tar Heels are taking on Mike Malone, former head coach of the Denver Nuggets, as their next head basketball coach for the Tar Heels. This is not a bad hire. So let me break down the names that we talked about. Tommy Lloyd, no, he's not coming back. He's staying at He's staying at Arizona. He got his extension during the tournament. Dusty May obviously wasn't going to leave now that he's a national champion. They couldn't wait that long either, because the portal opened in short order this week. You also had some other candidates. Billy Donovan being the most interesting of the group. Donovan, multiple-time national champion winner at Florida. I believe 2-time national champion. I don't say multiple, more than one. With the Chicago Bulls. And his was the most interesting timeline, because he was not going to render a verdict about whether he wanted to leave or not until the season ended with the Chicago Bulls. Now, basically, the Bulls season ended weeks ago, because the Bulls don't try, because they don't care about being a competitive basketball team, and that's just the fact of the matter, because they have consistently rolled out teams that aren't trying to compete for a playoff spot. And that's because ownership and everybody agrees that that's the case right now. You could go 41-41 and finish 500 and be happy there. I mean, it's also why the White Sox aren't really trying right now either. It's just the way the business world works for owners and sports teams. I mean, I'm wearing a team, and we'll get to them in a minute, with my own frustrations about that. But ultimately, Billy Donovan said, he doesn't commit to it. I think there's some other names that have floated around the job. I know a lot of people want to make it out to be, UNC couldn't get what they wanted. They got turned down by so much. No, I don't think. I think really what they wanted was Billy Donovan. I think once Billy Donovan said the timeline's going to be this timeline for him, they're like, we have to move quicker because we're not going to get behind in the portal again. And Mike Malone had been around the program. He had been supporting it now that his daughter plays, I believe, volleyball there, and had been around talking positively about the program. He invested in it with his daughter going there, and he was hanging around, those teams and hanging around the campus. So, I mean, it makes logical sense that a guy like that would want to get into something like that if it so presented itself. And eventually they got to a deal that would bring him back. He had been doing TV, I believe, for ESPN. And, even when he was fired as the Nuggets coach, it was a major shock to the league that they would fire him after winning the title the way he did. But I think one area that people are immediately going to attach this to is like, well, they're bringing in another failed out, burned out coach at a pro league to coach college, and college is different. Look what Bill Belichick did. This is not the same thing. And I love Bill. I will fight till the end of the time to support Bill Belichick because Bill Belichick gave me many great years of happiness as a sports fan. And he may be coaching a team I don't necessarily root for, but I won't accept the Bill slander to the degree that people want. Now, do I think they have to be better this year? Absolutely. That's no doubt. And a lot of it comes down to, putting people in a place to succeed. They didn't do that last year. But Mike Malone, who has admittedly more college experience than Bill, not a lot. You have to go back 20 some odd years to get it. But Mike Malone is still more on the, more in the game. He's been involved with, teams, and he'd been on benches. He had obviously led a team to a national title in the last couple years. One area that I think this really should excite Carolina fans is this isn't someone from the Dean tree. This is a new hire outside. This is a guy that has worked at the NBA level, and let's face it, college basketball is the closest to its pro sport counterpart of any other sport that we talk about. You can't say that about football. You can't say that about baseball. You can't say that about hockey. Basketball, because now we have guys that are professional deciding to drop down from the G League because they're getting paid peanuts in the G League to go take a couple million to go back and play in college and completely bungle the idea of professional athlete versus amateur status. So whatever. They're all professional now. That's just the way it is. So this sport is definitely more so than any other college sport. And the other thing that's interesting, we just mentioned it at the top of our show. See if you were paying attention. We'll come back. Always comes back around like a lazy Susan. We come back around. It may take us a while, but we'll get back around. Illinois and several other programs interacting with the European player pool, getting players from around the globe to show up and play in colleges in the United States, doing all these pieces and adding all these things to make their teams better. A guy like Mike Malone knows that perfectly well. He had probably the best Euro we've ever seen in Nikola Jokic, who's still a freak. He's the freakiest basketball player I've ever seen. Like what he does, nobody does. So, again, you're going to attract a different group of players than maybe Carolina has attracted over the years. But, again, I think you had to go where the game is going. If you just decided to do business as usual at Carolina, which is what you had with Hubie, there's a ceiling to that. And I think they ran into that ceiling with Hubert Davis. Now, I'm not saying it, you may have a more volatile floor with Mike Malone, but the ceiling definitely has upward mobility, unlike it did with Hubie. Now, Hubie peaked at the beginning of his career and was all downhill from there. Look, I'm not saying this is a 10 out of 10 perfect hire, but I am intrigued by it. And I do think there is merit reason to be excited about this hire if you're a Carolina fan. I'm not saying it's going to be perfect. I'm not even saying it's going to work. I'm going to say I see why they did it, and I see why it should be appealing to people in Chapel Hill. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater in this one. I think there's a lot to like about Mike Malone taking this job. And the last up of our main stories here before we get to a couple new segments we've got new stuff for you this week. It's amazing. All these ideas I have them. I'm going to share them with you. We have the oversaturation of TV figures, and you know who I'm talking about. We are at Augusta this week. Augusta is the big, white picket fence, perfect historical, tradition above all else venture that has sustained itself for as long as it has. But because ESPN and other, TV network executives have no ideas anymore, when we go to cover sports, we have to have Jason KELCE, Stephen A. Smith, we have to have Kevin Hart, we have to have Pat McAfee, we have to have Bert Kreischer. So let me break it down, because I saw plenty of people commenting about this and talking about it. Now, if someone in the business, I will start by saying this. I respect that all those men that I just listed, with the exception of Bert Kreischer, have done work, and Kevin Hart, have done real work to get to where they are in the field of sports media and such. So I'm not gonna shit on them for that. I'm gonna tear them down for that. What I am gonna do is I am gonna point out that their antics should never be more important than the event itself. And I think the problem is nowadays we've moved so far from the traditional format of sports media and television by the content side. We've fallen to the content side of things that we don't have a way to go back properly and treat it like it, had been over years. Now, Prime, who got involved with Masters coverage this year, has done a phenomenal job, and people have been really excited to see what they brought to the table. And they've taken that more serious, nuanced approach to it, as opposed to the Disney-fied version where you have Jason KELCE jumping around and putting on the full caddy uniform and hitting shots, and Kevin Hart getting a golf lesson out there on the opening tee. It's just like some of that's fine. Now, Stephen A is he's the biggest part of. He and Pat are the biggest part of what ESPN does. They're going to be there. I don't really even have a problem with that. I think Augusta has every right to tell people, especially ESPN, who's a partner, as well as CBS and whoever else covers the Masters, who they can and can't have, and who they do and don't want. I know Kenny Mayne for years got put in the timeout box by Augusta National Golf Club, and wasn't allowed to go and compete there, or not compete there, represent ESPN and go on air and cover the event. He wasn't allowed for comments he made. And again, they're a private club. They can do whatever the hell they want. I mean, we're all just guests to them. It's that scene from Casino. You just don't understand, Mr. Rothstein. You're all just guests here. That's really what it is. It's like the mob out in Las Vegas. You've got the mob trying to work their way in, and then you've got the traditional existing Wild West portion of Las Vegas that pushed up against them. That's like, y'all think you're taking over and you think you're in charge here. We'll see about that. They've got connections too. They've got politicians in their pocket. It all works out. I will say I am a little bit spent on a couple of these guys. Like Jason, I do like Jason KELCE. I'm entertained by Stephen A. I'm entertained by Pat McAfee. I like those guys. I like them for what they do. I think the problem people have with guys like that is I think they don't want to see them talk about everything because they're not qualified to talk about everything. Not everybody is qualified to talk about everything. You could sit here and listen to me talk about this shit and be like, he's not qualified to talk about that, or that. I'm still going to do it because as a human being, I have the free will to do such a thing. And you can choose to like what I say or choose to listen to what I say or don't. That's the beauty of it. Now, the problem with being the worldwide leader at an event like this is you're kind of the authority on site when you have to tune into Masters coverage and whatnot. Why is it always when I'm recording? This seems to just want to go wild. As for Bert Kreischer and Kevin Hart's fine. He's harmless. He shows up. He makes it about him. It's comedic. It's whatever. I mean, you can either laugh at it or not. I'm tired of Bert because Bert's everywhere. Bert is the example. If you were going to put a dictionary definition of the word overexposure, it's Bert Kreischer. And I mean, I've said it before. I don't find Bert Kreischer funny. Whoa, man, you took your shirt off. Whoa, crazy. You're a comic genius, my guy. Wait, you drank beers at Florida State? Holy shit, I can't believe it. Wow. Well, now is for Bert Kreischer, on the other hand, I've made it no secret. I'm not a fan. I mean, what are we talking about? The comic genius of Bert Kreischer? Whoa, he took his shirt off. Whoa, he had a brewski at Florida State. Whoa, I mean, what are we doing here, dude? Tell a joke. I mean, I like a lot of comics that are friends with Bert Kreischer, but I don't like Bert Kreischer's comedy at all. I think it's not my cup of tea, and that's fine, because comics are like artists, like anything else, they're subjective. I just think the shtick gets so boring. And now that we've been forced to consume Bert Kreischer's comedy and stuff in everything, even if you did like him, I don't know how at this point you're not going like, all right, I'm going to turn this off. Let me grab the remote here. Off. See him and his gut and showing up and doing whatever laugh he does. That high-pitched squealy laugh he does, it just drives me, I want to throw the TV remote at it. I get it. We get it. We know you like these people, networks. We get it. Stop forcing them on us. The worst thing you can do to a TV audience of any kind is to force something down their throat. It's never going to work. It never works. And I understand you gave all these people big money. I will say, I think Jason KELCE is interesting. I think he does do good work with football. His podcast does do well. I know a lot of that's from his brother's popularity, but I do find Jason relatively entertaining. But there's a line. Notice, I said there's a line there. I like him here. I don't want him up here. And I certainly, he doesn't have to be over here, but I don't need this much Jason KELCE. I probably need about this much Jason KELCE. Maybe a little bit less goes a long way. Maybe I'll want him a little bit more if you bring it down here. But if you're giving me this all the time, I'm going to go, all right, I can do something else with my time. I'll go watch grass grow. So there you go. Oversaturation, guys, we got to knock it off. It's too much, too much, too much. Now it's time to debut a brand new segment to the program. It's called the 60-second segment. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to pull the old phone out here, and I'm going to put a timer down, and I'm going to talk about 3 topics that I have. And normally, to try to keep these episodes moving for you guys and do all those fancy things, I want to cover a lot of stories and topics. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to rip 3 off rip like this and go 1 minute on them. And when that timer is done, I'll go to the next one, and so on and so forth. And we'll go from there. So we're going to start the clock just like this, and we're going to start with Manny Machado. Manny Machado got involved in another Bush League incident with the Boston Red Sox in the San Diego Padres game the other day, kicking a ball into foul territory, kicking it away from the base runner on a throw down to first. I will say this. Manny Machado is an incredibly talented and gifted baseball player. I've known that from the first time I saw him play with the Baltimore Orioles. Between his time there, between his time with the Dodgers, between his time with the Padres, he's a phenomenal player, probably a Hall of Famer. But I have never seen a more talented athlete at the game of baseball conduct himself in more Bush League a manner than Manny Machado. Yes, I'm a Red Sox fan. I didn't forget about what you did to Dustin Pedroia going cleats up and basically ending his career. I will never forgive you for that. But the instances of hitting Derek Norris with the bat when you were in Baltimore, or, instances where you step on Jesus Aguilar's foot going down the Bates pads, or this stuff, just knock it off, dude. You're talented enough. You don't have to do this Bush League shit, okay? Stop. Oh, there you go. 1 minute. Not bad. We'll start again here with the second story up. It is, actually, make sure I got the order right, because I'm going quick here, folks. Story number 2. If you don't know, Cletus McFarland is a YouTuber who has gotten into NASCAR over the last couple of seasons. He's been able to run select ARCA races and other events. He's now gotten to run some of the Xfinity series, which is now the O'Reilly Auto Parts series. He's a very successful YouTuber for making car culture and, racing, and he's a big friend of Greg Biffle, who passed later last year, I should say. Running over myself. Cletus has had a hard time getting into the NASCAR licensing process and getting the opportunity to run certain levels of NASCAR sanctioned racing. I have to say this. I think the criticism and the dialogue around Cletus McFarland is getting ridiculous. I think if we let any 15-year-old or 16-year-old with daddy's money hop into a race car and run at any level of the series now because they have the money, we shouldn't be as so critical and harsh to him if we're not going to be critical and harsh to all these different drivers. I mean, we could go down the laundry list of guys that TRD has run up or a bunch of others that didn't deserve to be in that spot where they were, but they had the money to be there. I'm saying you have to apply the same logic to both. Ran over a little bit, but Cletus McFarland, I'm all for him being a part of the sport, and I'm all for him trying his way to work his way up. He needs to learn how to do it a little bit better at this level and at all levels he races at. But he's got the car control. He's got talent. If you're not going to judge some of the kids with daddy's money, don't judge a guy who made it himself. Okay, that one was a little bit over a minute, but that's okay. Last up, this one will be easy. The Boston Red Sox started the year absolutely awful. Fortunately, they get a win over the Milwaukee Brewers, 2 games out of 3 there. They start a 3-game series against the Cardinals tonight. Look, sell the team chance, we're already starting. Do I think that was probably a bit premature? Yeah. But I think what people don't understand around the league is Red Sox fans are tired of being treated like a small market team because the front office has chosen to penny pinch on certain things. You have the most expensive day out of the ballpark for a family of 4. You have not retained players over the last couple years with exorbitant contracts who were either really popular with the fan base or high producing. Whether that was because of their internal strife behind the scenes or not, you have taken away from a club that wants to be competitive. You went to the postseason last year. You were not a threat because of the fact you didn't have the pitching. Now you have the pitching. The pieces aren't working all together yet. I think it's a long season. I believe in Alex Cora and that squad. But when people get mad at ownership, it's because of these things, and the start slow exacerbates that. So don't blame the fans, blame ownership that hasn't committed to being serious about whether it's front office personnel, players on the field, or putting things all together to be a competitive team. When you see big market teams like the Dodgers spending exorbitant amounts of money, and know that's how you used to do business in Boston, you can't expect fans of a certain mindset to be like, why can't we do what we were doing when we were winning World Series? So there you go. I saw that comment a lot this weekend. That's a minute, and it's a little over a minute. We'll work on it. But for the most part, that's the segment. The 60-second segment. Rattle them off in 60 seconds or less, or more in this case. I saw a lot of people complaining, well, you guys made the postseason last year. That's not the point. Alex Bregman should still be on this Red Sox roster. If you're going to get rid of Devers the way you did in such unceremonious fashion, then the guy you have to bring in to create that strife has to be here. And he's playing well for the Chicago Cubs. I almost said White Sox. I don't know why I did that. But there you go. That's my rant. They have turned it in the right direction. Wilson Contreras is fun. He's creating all sorts of drama. He's got a little swagger to him. I like it. Willer Abreu, my guy. Best hitter in the lineup. Guy's kicking ass and taking names. I love it. Last up before we get to our final segment here of the week, I do want to promote that on Thursday, April 23rd, myself and a mystery guest to be named later are going to bring you the entire first round of the draft here with the Draft Show Extravaganza, the 3rd annual Draft Show Extravaganza here on Moonlight Media Works, breaking down the first round of the draft. That will be on Thursday. We're probably going to start around 7 o'clock, somewhere around there, because the draft itself probably won't start till 8. We'll bring you the breakdown and the information you need to know about the first round of the draft on that day. So please tune in for that. We're going to be live, hopefully, on Facebook, YouTube. We'll be live on somebody's Facebook. Our official account doesn't have enough followers. So if you can, please go subscribe to the Facebook page at Moonlight Media Works. That way we can go live and be a lot easier. when they started putting caps on this stuff because of followers, that really started to piss me off. But we are going to be hopefully live on TikTok. So if you want to follow, it'll be CollinsJ9898. We'll put that information out on social so you guys can follow us there. We're going to give you all the things you need to know. The Draft Show Extravaganza, one of the foundational pieces of what we do here at Moonlight Media Works. Happy to bring it back for another year. And we'll obviously be live on YouTube, and we may even be live here on Riverside. So however you want to digest it that night, please tune in. We'll give you the coverage you need. More so than anyone else, maybe. Last story of the week. It's not even a story. It's the last segment, I should say. New segment. We had one new segment. Well, now we have two. It's a thing you probably noticed. On these episodes, you see me with my hat collection that has shown up. I thought at some point it would be fun to document just what I've got going on. Now, today I went with the old Chris Sale Red Sox jersey. This isn't very helpful. You can't see it. Just take my word for it. I'm going to tear a rotator cuff trying to turn my shoulder like that. I'm not going to do that. But I went with the Red Sox look today. Excited to watch some baseball as well as the Masters this weekend. But I do want to start this segment off. It's called Hat of the Week. And we'll do this periodically. We're probably going to get one in each week. When we don't have something that's got my attention this week or another segment, this segment will come in and do its deal. And I thought this was an appropriate week to do it because the first hat I'm going to showcase this week in my hat collection, and I have a large hat collection. As my father said, son, I don't understand why you have so many hats. You only have one head. While that might be true, it's no different than having 1,000 watches or girls with their shoes or whatever the hell else. It's something I've collected since I was a child. I've been given hats all my life. I love hats. I collect hats. I find hats. I love them. First one I'm going to do this week was actually one I acquired from Brent Wentz, who, if you don't know who Brent Wentz is, he's a spotter on the 51 car, I believe. He also works in IndyCar as a spotter. Brent is a NASCAR guy. He's located here in the Carolinas. I believe he's up in Mooresville. I found his page, and it's I'll tag it in the show. It's a page called Days Gone By Vintage, racing apparel and such. So he's got a page, and he does it as a side business because obviously he's a spotter. Grew up in modified racing up in Pennsylvania is where he's originally from. But he has a pretty extensive collection of, new old stock and a bunch of other vintage jackets, hats, pennants. I bought banners, and I bought hats. I bought shirts. I bought a bunch of stuff from Brent over the years. Brent's been very fair and very nice to me over the times that I've worked with him. He doesn't know me from Adam, but I've always supported his page, and I continue to do so. But one of the hats that had been sitting up there for the longest time, and I finally went ahead and got it, was this 1992 NASCAR Winston Cup champion hat for Alan Kawicki. And you can see it all the way around there. This hat is significant to this week and why we're talking about it this week, because we are back at Bristol for the spring race here in the Cup Series. And in 1993, a year after, just not even a full year after, Alan won an improbable championship as an owner-driver over Bill Elliott and Davey Allison, was tragically killed in an airplane crash on his way to Bristol. And one of the most hauntingly beautiful scenes and sad scenes in NASCAR history came up on my feed today, and it reminded me of this when the hauler for the 7-car left Bristol for the final time after leaving the track that weekend and knowing that Alan was not going to get to pilot a race car ever again, and he left us. Alan Kawicki's story is an inspiration in NASCAR. He was a longtime ASA driver, one of the best late model engineer/drivers in the country at the time. Got his chance in the Cup Series, underfunded for a long time, got Hooters on board, and pulled together one of the most incredible underdog stories in the history of NASCAR, winning the 1992 championship over Bill Elliott with Junior Johnson's Racing Empire team behind him that was so strong for so many years, and Davey Allison, who's son of Bobby Allison, a part of NASCAR's family legacy and such. He pulled off a championship win there, taking it, really building his own engines, doing all these different things, running his own team. And Alan's story should never be forgotten for people that are wanting to do things their own way, people that do it themselves, pull themselves up and do it because nobody else will for them. It was a tragic loss of both Davey that same year in a helicopter crash and Alan two guys that made 1992 probably one of the NASCAR's greatest seasons, if not NASCAR's greatest season. Left us tragically far too soon, and it was, I think, the appropriate time to showcase the first hat in the Hat of the Week segment with the lasting legacy of Alan Kulwicki in the 7 car here in his 1992 championship hat. So I bought this hat years ago, and I'm a nerd for the history of the sport. I'm a nerd for recognizing those stories that I love so much. So glad I could get that hat. Check out Brent if you have a chance. If you're in the market, need to go to the racetrack, need to look spiffy, need to have your old school merch, go check out Brent at Days Gone By. I'll tag that page below. So that's going to wrap up our show. Thank you so much for watching. Enjoy the Masters, enjoy baseball, enjoy, the nice weather depending on where you are in the world. If it's not nice, don't enjoy it. Stay inside. But again, figure out something to do. Have a grand old time. Check out the YouTube channel if you haven't already. We got videos posted there all the time. Follow us on Instagram, Facebook, X as well, Moonlight Media Works. If you look up that, you can find the pages for all those platforms. But until next week, we'll see you there. This has been another edition of the Collins Janus Show. The preceding episode was a production of Moonlight Media Works.